Imagine these echoes, like whispers across centuries, the sound of footsteps, women who just refuse to be, well, penned in.
Yeah, women navigating lands nobody they knew had seen, leading nations with incredible smarts, leaving their mark.
Exactly. Welcome, everyone, to this deep dive from the All Sorts podcast. Today, we're really shining a light on these often hidden stories, these amazing women travelers, explorers, leaders.
It really is fantastic to get into these stories, to see how women just consistently sort of broke the mold and shaped, well, everything.
And when you think about the ancient Silk Roads, that massive network connecting East and West,
Yeah.
way back to like 1st century BCE to the 5th CE,
Uh-huh.
the picture's usually, guys on camels, right?
Mhm.
Merchants. But the truth, as we're going to see, it's much richer than that.
Totally. And even before the Silk Roads, there's this mind-blowing new research suggesting something pretty radical.
Right. That women might have actually been the original long-distance travelers back in Bronze Age Europe.
It's a game changer, that idea. It really forces us to rethink, how early societies worked, how people moved, the roles everyone played.
So our mission today, kind of in the spirit of the All Sorts podcast, is to dig up these diverse, essential ways women shaped history through their journeys, their leadership, their impact on trade, on culture.
We've got some great sources to draw on to really bring these stories out.
Yeah, we do. So get ready to be amazed, honestly. We're about to explore the lives of some truly unforgettable women.
Okay, so let's start maybe with the Silk Roads themselves, sort of during their peak, say 100 to 500 CE.
Good place to start.
What strikes me first is, well, their contribution starts right at the source material.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Silk itself, the thing the roads are named after, primarily made by women in China. Just picture that. Centuries ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was women's hands nurturing the silkworms, pulling those delicate threads, weaving these incredible fabrics. There's even that legend, right? About Princess Jilanshi.
Oh, yeah, the cocoon falling in her tea. Classic origin story.
Exactly. And it wasn't just some small-scale thing. The Han Dynasty government, they saw the value. They gave tax breaks to families growing mulberry trees, raising the worms. So women's work directly helped their families, helped the whole Chinese economy, really.
And it wasn't just making the stuff. Women were also key players in diplomacy. Think about the Chinese princesses sent off as brides.
Right, to marry rulers of neighboring tribes like the Wusan or the Xiongnu, these powerful nomadic groups on China's borders.
Those weren't exactly love matches, were they? More like strategic political moves, all about keeping the peace on those often pretty tense frontiers.
Yeah, peace treaties in human form, essentially. Shows how women were used, often at huge personal sacrifice, but they were vital for stability.
Definitely. Diplomatic envoys, but wearing royal robes. Lu Shizun, for example, sent to the Wusan king. She wrote this poetry,
Oh, yeah.
about how homesick she was. Just this profound longing for home. You can still feel it reading it now.
Wow. And then there's Wang Zhaojun. Her story's legendary. Married the Xiongnu leader around 33 BCE. They say the emperor really regretted sending her once he actually saw how beautiful she was, but the treaty was too important.
Right. And she stayed, even after her first husband died, married within the family like Xiongnu, custom dictated, but also fitting Confucian ideas. Her kids helped keep the peace, too.
And she became this huge cultural figure. Poems, art, opera, still celebrated today. It's fascinating how they were used politically, but did they actually, hold any real power in those situations?
Yeah.
Or were they just pawns?
That's a really good question. I mean, their marriages were political, sure, but imagine navigating those complex courts, foreign cultures. That must have given them some kind of influence, maybe subtle but real, something the official records don't always show.
Yeah, their very presence, their children, kept those alliances going.
Exactly. And this practice continued. Wenqin Gongzu, okay, she's a bit later, 7th century.
Right, outside that 100-500 window, but still relevant.
But her marriage to the Tibetan emperor in 641 CE, that's credited with ending a war. And she supposedly brought all these Chinese innovations to Tibet. Big cultural exchange.
She didn't go alone, right? Had this huge entourage, servants, teachers, inventors.
Shows how significant these missions were. But women weren't just on the edges or sent away. They were right there in the thick of it, in those bustling Silk Road towns.
Oh, yeah. Like running businesses.
Running inns, yeah. Selling stuff in the marketplaces, dealing with all those travelers coming through.
These towns must have been incredible melting pots. And women were key to keeping them running economically.
Definitely. And you also see Buddhist nuns being really important, especially in places like Dunhuang. By the 9th century, it had, what, 5 nunneries?
One with 200 nuns, often princesses dodging arranged marriages, right?
Exactly. And it wasn't just the nuns. You had devout ordinary women, lay women, supporting the temple, the nunneries with donations, playing a big role that way, too.
So religion, trade, but there was more, right? Entertainment.
Oh, for sure. The Silk Roads weren't all serious business. You had Sogdian dancers. Apparently they were amazing, really in demand.
And didn't we read about Larishka, a singer and dancer?
Yeah, from Kucha, 9th century again. Her life sounds wild. Traveling with armies, then starting her own school for dance and song.
Then becoming a refugee when politics shifted. Wow.
Her story really shows how dynamic and sometimes dangerous life could be along those routes.
Definitely. And we can't forget women as consumers either. They were driving demand for a lot of the luxury stuff being traded.
Totally. The silk, obviously, but also spices, pearls, art.
That Roman cookbook, Apicius, full of Eastern spices, shows you the demand in Rome.
Right. And Pliny the Elder, he famously complained about Roman women wanting all these expensive Eastern goods. But his complaints just prove how much economic clout they had as consumers. And like you said, it wasn't just vanity. Incense, spices, they were crucial for Roman religious rituals too.
Good point. But it's so important to remember it wasn't all, rich ladies buying pearls.
No, absolutely not. Munay's letter. That Sogdian letter found in Dunhuang.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It really is. A woman left behind, separated from her husband, in debt, just despairing. It's such a stark reminder of the hardships some people faced.
Totally grounds any romantic ideas you might have.
Yeah.
Shows the human cost behind the big picture of trade.
Exactly. And even when the government tried to, control trade with policies like equitable marketing.
Yeah, trying to stop price gouging and stuff.
Confucian scholars at the time were arguing that those very policies actually made life harder for the producers, like the women weaving the silk.
So you see this tension, right, between government goals and the reality for ordinary people.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of silk arriving in Rome, even Pliny, while grumbling about the sheer silks Roman women wore, he actually credited a woman, Pamphile, on the island of Kos with discovering how to make silk there, or at least that kind of sheer silk.
Huh. Interesting. So really, from making it to diplomacy to business to buying it, even in the myths, women were just woven into the fabric of the Silk Roads.
Completely. Which kind of leads us to think about the bigger picture, right? How women's ability to travel, their freedom, changed over time and in different places.
Yeah, let's zoom out and look at how women's travel evolved more broadly. From ancient times up to today, it's quite a journey in itself.
It really is. If you look way back, ancient Greece, Rome, China, travel for women was, generally speaking, pretty limited.
Safety concerns, mostly.
Yeah.
And just societal expectations about staying home.
Pretty much. Often, if a woman did travel any distance, she needed a male guardian. But like we saw with the Silk Roads, there were always exceptions.
Rich women, maybe? Like Sappho in Greece or Aurelia in Rome?
Yeah.
Traveling for fun or religion?
Exactly. Or for pilgrimage or education, like you saw sometimes in Islamic societies or East Asia.
So little cracks in the system, allowing some women, usually with status or money, to get out there.
Right. Then move into the Middle Ages, and things start to shift. Subtly, maybe, but shift nonetheless. Noble women like Eleanor of Aquitaine.
She got around.
Definitely. Traveling a lot for court stuff, diplomacy, shows a growing, maybe still limited, but growing recognition of their roles outside the home.
And weren't there 3 main things that helped women travel more in that period?
Yeah, basically 3 key factors. First, monasticism. Becoming a nun offered an alternative to marriage. And within nunneries, women could actually gain quite a bit of power and autonomy.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
Second, the economy. Women got more involved in marketplaces and guilds. I read somewhere that by 1300, something like 86% of guilds were open to women.
86%. Wow, that really goes against the stereotype of medieval work being all male.
Yeah.
They could even train apprentices.
Yeah. And the third factor was just politics. With kings and queens, women could end up ruling as queens or regents, which obviously meant travel and a public life.
Still, we should probably remember that for most ordinary women back then, travel was still difficult, right? And traveling alone was definitely frowned upon.
Oh, absolutely. Suspicion, disapproval. But the direction of change was there.
Then, fast forward to the 19th, 20th centuries. Things really start picking up speed.
Massively. More access to education meant women travel for study. Ideas about personal growth through travel started catching on.
And technology. Railroads, steamships, eventually planes, made getting places just Way easier.
Huge difference. Though even then, views were mixed. People admired adventurous women, sure, but there was still criticism, worry about safety, reputation.
And travel was still mostly a thing for the wealthy, I imagine.
For sure, for a long time. But look at today. It's changed so much again. Women traveling is generally seen as empowering, right?
Yeah, for personal growth, breaking stereotypes, connecting with people. There's a whole global community now.
And much more awareness about safety, resources to help female travelers.
It's amazing how far things have come, built on the courage of all those women who went before. Which makes me think, we have to talk about the female pharaohs of ancient Egypt.
Oh, absolutely. Talk about powerful women defying expectations. In a society where kingship was so strongly male, you still have these incredible women taking the throne.
It's fascinating. Despite all the pressure towards male rulers, you keep seeing these powerful women emerge. Although, sadly, sometimes their legacy was later erased or downplayed.
Yeah, that erasure is a recurring theme, unfortunately. But let's start with maybe the most famous one, Cleopatra VII.
The last pharaoh.
Mm-hmm.
Super smart, strategic, her alliances with Julius Caesar, then Mark Antony. She shaped history.
Her story is just epic. Politics, love, war, tragedy.
Yeah.
She was definitely a force to be reckoned with.
But she wasn't the first Cleopatra to rule, right? There was Cleopatra III.
Right. She married Ptolemy V, and when he died, she ruled as regent for their son. She even put her face on coins, sometimes making her look more important than him.
Bold move.
Mhm.
Then there's Telesret, wife of Seti II. She ended up ruling as pharaoh herself for a few years around, 1189 BCE.
Yeah, and she's even mentioned by Homer, which is incredible. But later, someone tried to scrub her name and image from her tomb.
That erasure again. So frustrating.
Yeah.
What about Nefertiti?
Ugh. Nefertiti ruled with her husband, Amenhotep IV, maybe even continued ruling after he died. We see art showing her as basically his equal. Then she just vanishes from the record. It's a real mystery.
And Hatshepsut. She's amazing. Started as regent for her stepson, Thutmose III.
And then just went for it. Took the full title, wore the male pharaoh outfit, even the fake beard.
Her reign was apparently really prosperous, lots of building. But didn't her stepson try to erase her memory later, too?
Seems like it. It's a disturbing pattern, isn't it? Successful female ruler. Let's try and pretend she didn't exist.
Awful. But their stories survive. Amos Nefertari, wife and sister of Amos I. She had that really powerful religious title, God's wife of Amun.
And she's often shown with dark skin, which has led to lots of discussion among scholars.
And even earlier, people like Ishotep, mother of Amos I, credited with holding Egypt together, maybe even leading troops.
Potentially, yeah. And so Beknefru, end of her dynasty, claimed co-rule with her dad, then ruled alone. We have statues showing her with male symbols of kingship.
It's just amazing how many there were, even with bits of the record missing. Neith-Kret, who Herodotus wrote about. Merit-Neith, maybe one of the very first rulers ever, male or female.
It really shows female leadership wasn't some total anomaly in Egypt. Is the erasure just like deliberate sexism, do you think? Or maybe just messy politics and succession fights?
Good question. Probably a mix of things. But they were definitely shapers of history, not just placeholders. Okay, so shifting from rulers to individual explorers, let's talk about some really inspiring travelers.
Okay. How about Egeria? 4th century Christian woman. She took this incredible 3-year pilgrimage around biblical sites.
And she wrote it all down. One of the earliest travel diaries by a woman we have.
Exactly. And apparently she was really respectful of local customs. A lesson for travelers even today, right? Support local culture, local economies.
Totally ahead of her time. Then jump forward to the 19th century. Eliza Ruhama Sidmore.
Ah, yes. The first woman in the National Geographic Society. A travel writer, photographer.
Documented Alaska, East Asia, especially Japan. And she's the reason for the cherry blossom trees in Washington, D.C.
That's right. She campaigned for, 24 years to get them planted? Shows how travel can inspire connections, build bridges. Amazing persistence.
Truly. And we absolutely have to talk about Bessie Coleman.
Oh, Bessie Coleman. Incredible story. African-American and Native American woman born 1892, wanted to fly.
But couldn't get training in the U.S. because of her race and gender, so she went to France.
Learned to fly there, came back a sensation. Her dream was to inspire other black women to fly.
And she refused to perform air shows anywhere that was segregated, using her fame to push for equality. What a hero.
Absolutely. Just pure courage, determination against unbelievable odds. Her legacy is still so powerful.
It really is. You see this deep human drive, right, to explore, to push boundaries. It's clearly been there for women throughout history.
And that desire, that yearning for freedom and exploration, it even shows up in mythology, doesn't it? Gods and goddesses linked to travel.
Yeah, like Hermes or Mercury in Roman myth, the messenger god, all about travel, communication.
Or Dionysus, god of, well, freedom, letting loose. And in Yoruba beliefs, there's Ishu, lord of crossroads, protector of travelers.
Shu in Egypt, god of wind and air, maybe travel too. Even Lucifer, okay, complicated figure, but sometimes seen as a symbol of freedom, rebellion.
Right. And Ganesha in Hinduism, remover of obstacles, travelers need that. Yakatakutli, the Aztec god of traders and travelers.
Manan MacLear for sea travel in Irish myth. Iris, the Greek rainbow goddess, another messenger.
It's like this deep, universal human thing, this fascination with moving, discovering, being free.
It really seems to be. But as we're celebrating these women, it's also really important, I think, to be careful not to just create simple hero stories.
That's a crucial point. For so long, women's stories and indigenous people's stories were just left out of the big explorer narratives.
And now, while it's great we're bringing women explorers forward, we need to avoid just making them uncomplicated heroes who overcame everything.
Right, because that can gloss over things like privilege or the whole colonial context they might have been operating in, how they actually navigated the restrictions they faced.
Yeah, someone like Alison Blunt warned about that, right? Don't just romanticize heroic women in colonial settings without asking questions about gender roles and power back then.
Exactly. And Josephine Peary, the wife of the Arctic explorer, her story is much more complex than just supportive wife or intrepid explorer. People are looking at her experiences with more nuance now.
So it's about digging deeper, finding those more critical perspectives. You mentioned some sources.
Yeah, scholars like Patricia Erickson on Peary, Deirdre Stam on Matthew Henson, Patricia Lorson on women's travel writing, Patricia Gilmartin, Lisa Bloom's book, Gender on Ice.
Carla Ulloa Inostroza's blog, Mujeres Viajeras,
Yeah.
Laura Kay's reading list.
Exactly. Those kinds of sources help us get beyond the simple hero narrative to something, well, more real and insightful about women's experiences.
Absolutely. And speaking of challenging old narratives, that Bronze Age research we mentioned earlier, it's just incredible.
Isn't it? The research from Munich's Ludwig Maximilians Universität, finding that back in the late Stone Age, early Bronze Age in Europe, women were moving around way more than men.
Based on analyzing their bones, right? Chemical signatures showing where they grew up versus where they died.
Yeah, isotope analysis. It showed women had lived in different places, drunk water from different geological areas, while the men tended to be local. It just flips the old idea of men ranging far and wide while women stayed home.
Completely flips it. And this wasn't just a blip, right? It went on for centuries.
Apparently, for around 900 years, it suggests women were absolutely key in spreading languages, culture, new technologies. They were building these early mixed communities across Europe.
Wow. And they were accepted, right? Their
Yeah.
burial rites showed they were treated the same as local men.
Seems so, which suggests they integrated into these new communities.
So women traveling solo, or at least moving independently, it's not some modern thing at all. It's ancient.
Exactly. It's thousands of years old. Kind of makes you want to embrace your own inner wanderluster, doesn't it? Knowing it's such an old tradition.
It really does. What an incredible journey we've been on today, looking at women across history. Travel, exploration, leadership.
The sheer range is amazing. From the Silk Roads to Egyptian pharaohs right back to the Bronze Age.
And these stories, so often pushed to the side, they just reveal so much strength, resilience, the power of women who stepped outside the lines society drew for them.
And thinking about them really makes you question our own assumptions, doesn't it? About gender roles, about what adventure even means, what leadership looks like.
Totally. Their journeys still have so much to teach us, so much inspiration to offer.
So maybe the final thought for everyone listening is, how do these histories challenge your assumptions? And inspired by these women, what new paths might we decide to explore?
Great question to ponder. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been absolutely fascinating.
Now, don't let the exploration stop here. Let the winds of curiosity, carry you further with our friends at the All Sorts podcast.
Yeah.
Think of it like turning those pages of history, finding even more untold stories. That's what we love doing at the All Sorts podcast. So if you enjoy diving into the lives of these amazing women, join us for more adventures on the All Sorts podcast YouTube channel. Definitely like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss anything new.
Please do.
We've got a whole library of other deep dives on all sorts of fascinating topics just waiting for you. And follow us over on X, Instagram, and Threads too. Join the community, keep the conversation going.
We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you again for diving deep with us today on the All Sorts podcast. We'll catch you on the next exploration.